The trial for the Mexican drug lord known as El Chapo began with fiery opening statements this week, with the defense claiming he was framed by the Mexican government for a decades-old murder of a Catholic cardinal. Prosecutors were outraged, asking the jury to disregard the statement, but Vice News spoke to the former DEA agent about this murder. He says the government did kill the cardinal.
The most obvious red light is the fact that the cardinal was dressed in cassock, in his full cardinal regalia, to meet the Secretary of State, and wearing a cross in his chest.
He doesn't think the hitman could have mistaken the cardinal for Chapo.
When he was shot numerous times, but it was a very accurate shooting. It was in the chest.
The forensics report says that the cardinal was shot from about 3 feet away.
You're going to go in for the kill, and you're going to see the person's eyes. Bang, 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 okay? It's hard for me to believe that you riddle a person with bullets and you still think he's Chapo when he's dressed like a cardinal.
Wow. Joining us now is co-host of the Vice News podcast, Chapo, and U.S. editor for Vice News, Keegan Hamilton. Good to see you.
Thanks for having me.
This is such a fascinating podcast because there's so much that we don't know. I mean, there's a lot of the sensational stuff that gets reported, but this is doing a deep dive. Tell us what you learned. You were in Mexico throughout this whole time. What did you learn there, and how do you see this playing out?
I mean, like you said, there's so much that people know about Chapo or think they know about Chapo. There's the legend, the myth. And what we tried to do with this was get to the root of it and try to find out what we could. Ultimately, we try to be transparent and say there's just some things we're probably never going to know. But one of the things we did learn was speaking to that DEA agent who we just heard, who was very familiar with the evidence in the killing of the cardinal, and basically said there's no way that this could have gone down the way the Mexican government said it did.
And why? Why does he feel that way?
Mostly because, as you heard, I mean, the cardinal is dressed like a cardinal with the full, regalia.
He's not dressed like a drug lord?
No, he doesn't. He looks nothing like El Chapo. And so if you're a cartel hitman coming to kill El Chapo and you're at close range, the forensics report from that incident said, fewer than 3 feet away, shot multiple times. It's kind of hard to believe that they didn't know who they were shooting.
So the first couple of episodes of the podcast explores the realities and sort of the complications of the cartel, like how some Mexican residents depend on the cartel. And this is played out in many countries, even here in the United States, where, mafiosos are sort of feared, but also they depend on the mafiosos for a variety of things. Explain a little bit of that.
Yeah, that's one of the defining traits of Chapo in Mexico, is he's viewed as this sort of Robin Hood type figure who gives his money back to the poor and to his community. I think, based on our reporting, we went to his hometown in the mountains of Sinaloa and found that there is some truth to that. People there talked about how he built paved roads, he gave them running water, he built a church for his hometown. But those are pretty isolated, as it feels like to us. And those isolated acts, that spreads out in the community. And so that word of mouth spreads. So he gets that reputation. He's not helping everyone, but helping the people in the area where he came from, has got him that reputation of giving back.
So I'm really looking forward to next week's episode because you spoke to a former DEA agent about this escape. I'm not sure which escape because there have been so many. This dude is Teflon drug lord.
So that's actually 2 weeks that we spoke to the DEA agent, and that's his escape from a near capture from the DEA in Mexico in 2014. They were sort of going into a safe house where Chapo was hiding out. He had a tunnel underneath his bathtub that went out into the sewer system under the city of Culiacan.
That is unbelievable.
And we actually went into this tunnel while we were there, and it's hard to believe that the guy ran for almost 2 or 3 miles in this tunnel, because it's about 5'3". You have to hunch over, and I would not want to be running for my life through this tunnel that has sort of sewage water in it as well.
Right, and probably sewage rats.
Yeah, exactly.
So this trial is being held in the U.S. The last 2 episodes explored the role of the United States in the rise of the Mexican cartel. So how can the U.S. prosecute El Chapo, but also come to terms, I guess, with El Chapo's success?
It's one of the central questions that, not just for our podcast, but for U.S. law enforcement policy towards Mexico in general. We spoke to a lot of people in Mexico who felt that taking Chapo out only made matters worse. There was, sort of the power vacuum that's left behind, and then fighting between groups trying to take over. Does that mean that he shouldn't be held accountable for his crimes? It's hard to say. I mean, he's certainly committed many acts of violence and deserves to be brought to justice for that. But whether or not it has a positive overall net impact in Mexico, I mean, there's two sides to it.
Such a fascinating story. The podcast is equally fascinating. It's called Chapo. Keegan, when does it normally air? It's
coming out Tuesdays, and you can get it on Spotify.
Tuesdays on Spotify. Thank you very much, Keegan. Appreciate it.
Thanks.